Hello, YouTube. Hello, Post Wrestling Cafe. Hello, everybody out there. We are live.
We are live. Welcome, everybody, to the Café Hangout. Wai Ting and John Pollock here with you for the next 45 minutes or so.
Or so, yes. We'll see.
Or so.
We'll see how we feel.
I put the or so in quotations. How are you?
Doing well, man. Yeah, lots to catch up on now that we have this kind of Thursday/Friday show.
Yes.
You know?
We're going to get into some news items, but right off the top, I want to let everybody know about how they can call in. We now have, brace for it, I hope everyone is seated or grabbing something that is secure to the ground, a Post Wrestling Skype account. You can now
Skype.
You can contact us and call in today by searching for Post Wrestling on Skype and calling in. Next week, we might even have something else.
Oh, how could you top Skype?
We should have had something today.
Well, listen, Google Hangouts is very nice. This is how we broadcast our shows, and it's worked out really well for the people that have been managing to call in. But
it hasn't been great. It
hasn't been great. It's been kind of riddled with some technical issues. So we want to open it up to Skype as well. And who knows in the future what else. We just want to have a seamless transition to be able to hear from you. So if you prefer Skype, just like John said, dig up your Skype account and search Post Wrestling.
Oh, that's new.
And call. What's new? Oh, the camera?
The camera.
Yeah. I'm trying out a different camera, guys. So, but if you do want to do Hangouts, I'm going to put that link up there in the thread as well in case you want to show your pretty faces up here in the Post Wrestling Cafe.
Off the top, I want to congratulate you, Wai.
Why is that?
Congratulations on being part of one of Toronto's 50 podcasts you need to listen to.
That is right. We've been named one of Toronto's top 50 podcasts.
Yes, from the good people at blogTO.
You know what? I wonder if I could even screen share this article. What is it? Top 50 podcasts in Toronto?
I tweeted it out on our Post Wrestling account.
I'm going to attempt to do this right now. I'm really kind of testing our limits here of what
is possible. I mean, we just got a Skype account, and that way is just getting greedy in terms of what we can all do.
I know. By the way, I want to say hi to everybody in the Hangouts right now. Hello, Mitch. Hello, Brandon Castro. Hello, other Brandon D.
Brandon.
Yeah, we got a couple Brandons in there. So, yeah, you can call in if you guys want to. But yeah, let me try to screen share our article.
I'm going to run through a few news items that have happened over the last 24 hours or so since we last spoke to you. Certainly, there is a lot of discussion about potential talent in the WWE and what their status is. I guess the big ones, the Revival, who this was first reported by Sean Ross Sapp at Fightful, that the Revival, there were concerns on the company's behalf that they could be wrapping up with the company. Dave Meltzer adding that they gave their notice on Monday after their match with Kalisto and Grand Metalik. Now it should be made clear we have no knowledge of these releases being granted or how long the Revival are still under deals. So they are WWE performers as we speak, and they are expected to be at the house shows this weekend. So there's no reason there. And we've seen in the past, the most recent significant one being Neville, of talent that just because you want your release does not mean you are going to be granted your release. Dovetailing off of that is Ryan Satin at Pro Wrestling Sheet adding Mike and Maria Kanellis' name to the mix as well as talent that have reportedly recently requested their release. Same thing. We don't know if that's been granted and what the status is. They are all still WWE performers as we speak. But I don't even need to break down individual cases here, Wai. I think that now people are seeing what the landscape is like outside of WWE. And if they're unhappy in the WWE, they are more confident than ever of taking their trade elsewhere and risking it, if they even perceive it as a risk.
Yeah, the effects of All Elite, the effects of this current kind of bidding war for all this talent is already
Ring of Honor. Ring of Honor is a player in here.
It's already being felt backstage in the WWE where unhappy talent such as, people with no power, no bargaining power in the past, perhaps like a Revival or a Mike and Maria Kanellis, now have the ability to voice their displeasure if they're not being utilized properly. I don't think this is going to be an isolated case. I think people are starting to just feel right now how much power they have outside of the WWE, and there are people much like the ones that we've been hearing about right now, that aren't afraid to burn some of those bridges. Not to say that they're necessarily going to piss anybody off by doing this, but they're not afraid to kind of speak their mind and let people know that they're not happy. So, you know, in the case of a revival, I think beyond perhaps looking to see if they can get out, we're also seeing people now get pushed because they have other options and they're voicing to the company that, hey, I don't need you, I can go somewhere else. And that's often resulted in benefits. So I would say, you know, it can work out two ways for the revival. They could either get pushed or they could get shelved and not get used at all.
I think we're on the verge of, I think, a very rich period for performers to enjoy in this. If you are a WWE contracted performer, I think that if you are unhappy and your deal is coming up over the next 6 to 8 months, you are either going to just have to simply go through that period and you're going to become a free agent at a very lucrative time, potentially, in the industry, or you're going to get I think a much more sizable offer from the company that does not want to be losing talent or have the perception that they are losing a lot of talent that want to leave. So I think the WWE, they're going to have to beef up some of their offers to keep some talent that may a year or two ago might have stayed for a lower guarantee, that now it's going to require more because they believe that their bargaining power has increased and the market will support a lot more than what a WWE offer of a year or two ago would have kept them there for.
Do you feel it was intelligent of the revival, who are still under contract, to voice their displeasure this way, or would it have been better to wait it out?
See, I have a hard time answering that, not knowing what's left on their contracts. If they have 2 years left, I would say maybe this wasn't the best move to make, because strategically, what incentive is there for the WWE to release them now, knowing where they're going to be going? That does not serve the WWE's interest at all. Now, if their deals are up in 6 months or less, then I think what does it hurt? It's you're making your declaration now. Maybe you're let out a couple months early, and you've let it be known that when these contracts are up, we're gone. So I think not knowing the term of what they have left, it becomes a more difficult decision to make. However, my gut, without having anyone confirm this to me, would be the WWE wanting to rectify and move forward and not want to just keep unhappy people and not utilize them at all. My assumption would be that they want to retain talent and not lose them. And part of that is money they can offer, but also a part of the equation for a lot of these talents is going to be happiness. Mm-hmm. And that money is not going to necessarily just be a gateway to the other, that you are going to have to present people with scenarios and a certain ability to be successful in the company. So that's what a lot of these guys are looking at. And it's a great time to be a free agent or be on the cusp of it, especially for those that have the ability to work WWE for the next year and see where everything turns out over the next year, and then be able to be a commodity when it's the next cycle of recycling talent for all these groups. I
wonder, like in the case of, you know, some of these talents, how much they like the fact that it's known publicly that they are unhappy and that they've asked for their releases. Because I think, you know, whether or not it results in bigger pushes for them within the WWE, it does turn them into greater, hotter commodities, regardless of, you know, where they end up afterwards. Like, we're talking about them right now. All of a sudden, the revival seem like they're bigger stars and hotter free agents, potentially hotter free agents than they probably would have been had they not said anything.
Yeah, and yeah, I don't want to get ahead of myself, because you and I have been recording the last few hours, so I'm not up on everybody. But I think it's telling that none of these people we have just listed have denied this.
Yeah.
I mean, that would seem to be pretty evident right there.
It's beneficial to them to let the world know that they are unhappy and that they feel that they deserve better. So, you know, wherever they end up, I think it seems like it might be a good move for them. The only negative would be if they're shelved or if they're completely jobbed out for the duration of their contracts,
which I think is such an antiquated viewpoint of talent. I don't think anyone, the old thinking was that, you know, a guy's on his way out, he's going to another territory, is that we'll beat him on the way out, and it lessens his star power going somewhere else. And I think the audience is just much more sophisticated at this point, that wins and losses don't mean as much. And there's good and bad to that. But part of it is that if the Revival were to lose for the next 6 months on TV every single week, and the first time the lights go out and the Bucks are confronted by the Revival, it would be enormous.
Yeah.
I don't think it would matter at all. So I guess the old joke that Brian Pillman made, or was Brian Pillman, I'll be the highest paid jobber in WCW if you're just going to beat me, because he wasn't going to take a pay cut.
Are there any more kind of contract things you want to talk about right now?
I think those are the ones that are kind of out there that we can like speak about at the moment. I don't doubt that there are many performers that are looking at their options at the moment and what their contract status is and what if they're happy or not. And there's going to be many that at the very least they may have no intentions of leaving, but could find themselves in a position where it's contract time and the WWE is going to have to spend a lot more to keep them, because their value on the free agent market is a lot more than it was 6 weeks ago.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see like how wrestling salaries end up changing, a year from now, what they look like.
They have to go up.
Everything's going up. Yeah. I think ultimately, though, the WWE can't afford those higher contracts. We know that for the time being, it seems like AEW can't afford those contracts. Maybe even Ring of Honor can afford those contracts. Where people that I think are going to think
about the idea that the money here is that we have the WWE that has their war chest. There is the Khan family that has. It's all depends on what is earmarked. And you have Sinclair Broadcasting. Yeah. So the options are there. It's just how much is going to be distributed to the wrestling division if you're the Khan family or you're Sinclair.
And I think the people that are going to feel the brunt of all of this the hardest are the tiers underneath those three. Your people like your Impacts and your MLWs who don't have those pocketbooks to compete.
Yeah, I mean, Impact's an interesting one. I mean, it's like they have... the Asper family is a very wealthy family, but also one that Impact is like, this is not a profitable company. And you have to be asking yourself, like, what are we spending money on talent wise? Like in Chris Jericho's podcast, he outlined that, he received a very good offer from Impact. And, if you're making an offer to Chris Jericho, it's you have to be talking serious money or else it's like, you're just insulting the guy. But my question is, what are you spending that money on versus what is the revenue coming in? They're in a position at this point where a Chris Jericho coming in to be on the Pursuit channel, like where is the revenue that you are deriving from? Can Chris Jericho open up doors to get you a bigger television deal? Well, then that's money well worth being spent. But with Impact, I think you have to look at the situation now. Like they're so off the radar in the US, like you can't even track their viewership any longer on TV. So we're not even going to know what the television audience is in the US anymore for Impact. MLW, I think that you have to look at the situation that these are the players you are competing with now. And it's a pretty big game now of, can you top this contract wise? And what you're going to be able to afford and who you're going to be able to retain. And as well, the talent that you have there now that are looking at the landscape of, my value may have been this a year ago when I signed here. Today, I can look and I know I can command this elsewhere. The economy has very much changed. It's in the process of changing rapidly.
The idea that, somebody like a AJ Styles could enter the free market right now and probably make way more money than he ever anticipated in his career. I find that I'm really happy for pro wrestlers, in general, like him, who seem to be able to garner that value. But it's interesting to see, like, maybe where somebody like him will end up. I'm sure, like, he's built a bit of a loyalty right now to the WWE, but what type of competing offers is somebody like AJ going to receive? All the way down to whoever.
He could get an offer so great that it's going to change whatever the timetable was of how long his career was going to be. Like, that's the kind of money I would see him. I think this next contract, whoever AJ is with a year from now, I think it's regardless. This guy has won whatever it is he opts to do. My gut would say he's in a really great position in WWE that I would hit him. It would be a surprise to me.
For somebody like him too, I think, like, there's stability to a job with the WWE, whereas AEW still largely untested. You don't know what their TV situation is going to be. You don't know how well they'll do on TV. So, but you know, for everybody else who's not AJ Styles, I would say this is only a positive.
Definitely. Some other news. Did you listen to the Talk is Jericho?
Yeah.
I wrote about it a lot on the website. I found it a really interesting breakdown of the last year and a half, almost 2 years, dating back to when his WWE contract expired in 2017 and what led up to the All Elite Wrestling signing. Some interesting notes, a lot of what was known, but there were some interesting news items in there too that weren't known.
This was an episode that I think is an early contender for a podcast episode of the year that we'll probably discuss later on.
I actually have a document for all the awards now that I'm updating weekly.
But, you know, much like I think, you know, how he's been with his podcast with Kenny and even like his All In appearance, Jericho is just like seems incredibly open and candid about.
Because his stories always check out too. Like you might get the odd bullshit comment from Jericho, but, you know, as they come to mind, like, Jericho is pretty damn honest about himself.
He's also at a point where in his career where like he has no reason to lie. Like it almost feels like he has the confidence that he's bulletproof enough that he can reveal little tidbits of information like that. It's not necessarily going to hurt anybody. And ultimately, I think it engages everybody and with a level of trust that we see for a guy like Jericho now. I loved the podcast. It was just thrilling. Even hearing little tidbits like how he rode in Tony Khan's private plane to go to All In.
Yeah, to get to the gig in Kansas after.
Yep. Other highlights perhaps include like him actually saying that he considered working with Impact.
He said he did get an offer from Impact, considered doing some dates with them, but ultimately didn't. You know, he's been one that has said that Impact, they have money, that they can make these competitive offers.
He's Chris Jericho, though.
Well,
right.
I think with Chris Jericho, I think you have to look at like Impact. It's like he was the one that recommended Scott D'Amore and Don Callis to Leonard Asper, to Ed Nordholm. I believe he genuinely wants to see Impact succeed. Those are two of his friends. Don Callis is a very good friend of his. And I just see with Impact, like, again, I go back to what we just discussed. I think they're in a tough spot in this current climate of wrestling. And it was a very different climate for them years back, where they kind of had a whole section of the US market to themselves because the WWE was not interested in that end of the market. And now they're all over it, and there's competitors that are all over it.
Do you want to go to our first call?
Yes, absolutely.
Hansi, you're there. Unmute yourself and you can talk to us right here on the Café Hangout.
You know, if he ever launches a podcast, it's got to be called the Hansi Scheme.
What's up, Hansi?
Yo, what's going on, guys? Happy New Year, first of all. Hope everything's I was going to talk about AEW, but I think you guys covered a lot of it. But I think like the two questions I had, one, I want, because you guys didn't cover this maybe, but there was like a discussion before the new year started about like, you know, New Japan incorporating women's division. And then there was obviously online when these things happen, arguments break out, obviously, where people are pointing out, well, Stardom doesn't need, like, these Joshi promotions don't need to go to New Japan. They have their own promotions. So I wanted to know what you, because John, you're pretty knowledgeable about the Japanese scene, but I didn't know what you felt about, like, do you think New Japan should incorporate a women's division, or are they behind the times, or, you know, and then I'll get to the second question after you answer this one.
Sure. You know, I know it's a very complicated topic that you can go at from many different sides of things. I really do not believe that New Japan is, you know, excluding women as just simply being, you know, over a gender bias. There are things they do with women on that show that I'm frankly appalled by at times, with, you know, some of the camera shots and the portrayal of some of the women. But I think not having women on the show, it's much deeper than just, you know, a headline that you can read and New Japan does not have women's wrestling. It's the idea that, number one, if you were to start a women's division in New Japan, well, you have to make room for all of those roster spots. This is a roster that is completely like there are too many performers at the moment on New Japan. Secondly, is where are these women performers going to come from? Once you kind of go into that topic, it's taking from the existing women's promotions that, you know, a lot of them have stated that, you know, if we lost all of these key performers, it would probably put a number of these women's promotions out of business as well. So it's a very different mindset there in terms of, you know, presenting the entire industry at a certain level of health and having all of these operations. I don't think anyone has any idea of just how many functioning wrestling promotions at varying degrees, there is New Japan and then there's everybody else, are operating at, and the amount of people that are deriving work from the professional wrestling industry. I can also see the side of things that, especially as New Japan is trying to make a further imprint into the United States, that not having women's wrestling is maybe a void that fans in the US would like to see, that are seeing the success of women's wrestling in so many different promotions that New Japan is missing something. So I can understand both arguments, but I can also see that it's a ripple effect, that there is a negative to it as well. If they were to suddenly pluck all of these stars that they made New Japan exclusive, and where would, you know, your Stardoms and your Ice Ribbons be, and countless other Joshi promotions that would lose a lot of significant stars in order to feed a promotion that honestly is doing really great business as is.
Okay, yeah, that's good, because I kind of felt the same way, but I wasn't as knowledgeable about it as, like, you know, other people. There's one chick named Sierra Reed. She's been doing, like, for like the past like 10 years, she's done write-ups on Japanese wrestlers and women wrestlers. So I just wanted to get your opinion on that. I'm for a women in New Japan. I just didn't want other businesses to go out of business for it. And yeah. My second question, and I'll get off before other people want to come back on. I don't want to take too much of your time. Do you guys? I want to know. Do you guys think that the Royal Rumble is going to be as easy as Becky Lynch just joins in, or do you think that they're going to give her the Daniel Bryan treatment, where we're expecting her to join in if she doesn't win the belt? Or and then, you know, they just incorporate her in some other type of way into the title match at WrestleMania? Or do you think she's actually going to be in it? Because I'm kind of worried that they won't actually have her in it, because they, you know, we assume that the person who loses the title match will always be incorporated into the Royal Rumble. That's what they've been doing with Roman Reigns the last several years. So I just wanted to know what you guys in general thought about, like, the route that they're going to take for the Royal Rumble.
Yeah, I think it's a great point to raise. I think that if Becky Lynch is not winning the title earlier in the show, there's several ways you can do it. But the idea of her not winning the title and then not being put into the Royal Rumble, I would hope that they have learned from the Daniel Bryan example cited in 2014 of what a disaster that turned into. And oh dear.
Oh, are we getting our first Skype call?
I believe we are. So let's
All right. Thank you, guys.
All right, thanks, Hansi.
Yeah, no problem, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, going back to Hansi's point, I find it, I mean, you can certainly see them maybe perhaps going the route of dispute finish with Becky versus Asuka, and then having perhaps Charlotte win the Rumble, somehow turning that into sort of the setup for the three-way. I think, like John said, you're going to have to expect pretty negative reaction for whoever ends up winning that Rumble, if it's anybody but Becky Lynch, if Becky Lynch doesn't make an appearance whatsoever. However, with the way that this Becky Lynch build has been going, perhaps it's a byproduct that is not necessarily such a negative thing. Becky Lynch has gotten to where she is because she is seen as the underpushed person, much in the same way Daniel Bryan was in that Royal Rumble leading into that WrestleMania, where he was not featured. And in their minds, that only seemed to serve to make him into a bigger star. So if they decide to go that same route with Becky Lynch by not featuring her at the end of the Royal Rumble, maybe in their minds, this is their way of pushing Becky Lynch in that weird way.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't have a plan for Becky in the Rumble, you can always do the title match after the Rumble. I just don't see that being as satisfying for people.
Which title match?
The women's title match with Asuka and Becky Lynch.
Oh, okay.
I mean, if the title match is coming out after, you would be less inclined to believe Becky. Why would she be in the
That
Rumble?
would be a good explanation as to why.
But here's the thing. What's the alternate scenario for the Rumble? Book me this Royal Rumble with Becky Lynch not being involved. It's a pretty unsatisfying match.
Yeah, it would be. It would be.
And I think that if you have her and Charlotte in the Rumble, it would, like, that is the direction everyone feels is.
But is the goal always to have a satisfying outcome at the end of the Royal Rumble?
Well, who is your alternate winner if not for
Charlotte?
Charlotte wins, and I think they've put themselves into a bit of a corner that I think you want to have Becky featured prominently on this show, and just losing to Asuka, unless she wins the title at the Rumble. That's a direction you can go in.
Or disputed finish.
Right. Yeah. There's several options you can do. But if you have Becky and Charlotte in the Rumble, that's what I think most people expect.
Becky and Charlotte in the Rumble. Yeah. Yeah. We'll see. I mean, to me, like, I've always preferred the clear path of Becky winning the Rumble to go on to a one-on-one match with Asuka, but maybe that's not what they had.
You mean Ronda?
Ronda, you're right. I'm sorry. You're right. Yeah. So Becky. Yeah. Anyway.
All right. Did you have any thoughts on the whole the women's wrestling in New Japan? Did you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, it's a very different system that they have set up there historically, that I personally don't necessarily feel qualified to speak on. I don't know if I can criticize New Japan for being.
I'm certain I'll discuss it with WH on the next show too.
Like, yeah,
I'd like to hear his thoughts too.
I would kind of defer to somebody like Chris Charlton or WH to speak on something like that. But for me personally, I certainly wouldn't mind seeing women in New Japan Pro Wrestling in matches, but can I lay the same kind of criticism on them that I currently do for like a WWE if WWE didn't feature a woman? There's so much more to me that goes into cultural differences between the two countries that, again, I feel like I have to know a bit more about Japan before I can speak on that. But our first Skype call.
Mitch, what is your question? How are you?
Yo, Mitch, how you doing, man?
I don't know if you guys can see me on video or not.
No video, just audio.
I was outside the United Nations. I was giving the tour of New York on the road to WrestleMania Liberty.
Well, we believe you. Describe the scene for us, for all the people listening.
It's very cold, and there's a fence behind me. I was going to make some Uso penitentiary joke.
Well, the effort was there, Mitch. We appreciate that.
The effort's there. Hey, so I don't diminish the quality of sound on this. Do you guys think they could possibly do the three-way to unify the women's title? Ronda, Becky, Charlotte, where Ronda and Becky are the title holders coming out of the Rumble, and you get Charlotte who wins the Rumble, and then that's how you kind of get to a unification. I ask that because I'm looking down the line when they go to Fox, and they're going to want all the big stars on both brands, and it does seem like maybe with the women's tag title, they're considering doing something where they just have one title across brands.
Well, I like the idea of a unification. I do expect the three-way. I don't know about the unification. I'd be all in favor of that, especially given how they're introducing the tag title belts. I think that would be something I would be all in favor of doing. The question that is unanswered is what those talent restrictions are going to be between NBC and Fox. If Fox is going to want to be not just showing talent that is showing up on Monday, but recapping angles that are happening on the USA Network. If vice versa with Fox, that's kind of an unknown in this whole deal, because that would not be shocking to me. This is not a network like UPN where, hey, they were fine with that crossover. That was no problem. Is that going to be the same case with Fox and NBC?
I think you can also kind of make the argument that, you know, certainly having Ronda on both shows is great. Having Becky on both shows is great, but perhaps taking away one of the belts might work negatively in diminishing their star power. Right now, you can look at Ronda being the star on one show and Becky on another show being equals. If they were both on the same show, one of them had a belt, one of them didn't. Does that change the perception of star power at all?
It's a very good point, and also it leaves a lot of women in the division to not really have anything to do unless they make the tag titles really important, which, based on the rollout, is questionable.
Yeah, you're looking at the Iconics versus Sasha and Bayley as, you know, you're right now what looks to be your top two contenders.
Well, in the famous words of Bart Scott, can't wait. The last thing I had for my WrestleMania themed call-in, which is kind of where my head's at the moment, is Drew McIntyre. Seemed to get a big rub from Paul Heyman, and they sent him out there with not a lot of time to cut the promo. I'm wondering if they did that because they really wanted him to get something in about Drew McIntyre. If they would strap the rocket to him, have him win the Rumble, and go face Brock. And again, you have the potential that Paul Heyman, who has hyped up this guy, could potentially swerve or screw Brock. And, you're definitely, that is somebody that could use the win that kind of Brock has built up all this credibility with all his wins over the years.
So Drew as a babyface for Mania. Is that what you're suggesting?
Not as much a babyface as kind of you have two guys that can play in between. I think you have a portion of the audience that just wants to see Brock lose the title because they're tired of a no-show champion. You could play that up. And then you also have the portion of the audience that is tuning in for Brock. So he is I don't want to say a babyface in the purest form, but he's a draw. So you have two guys that look the part. And, with a Brock Lesnar match, you have the intrigue and you have a 50-50 audience either way.
Well, I think that there's no doubt that Drew McIntyre is a major priority for them this year. I don't see him winning the Rumble, but I do see him being someone that is going to be in there right until the end. I think this is the Rumble for Seth to win, and if he's not winning it, it's only to delay becoming Brock's opponent for WrestleMania. I think all the seeds are planted. It's consistent with what I've heard, and that should be the WrestleMania match. What I kind of like with Drew, and they teased it during the appearance on Raw, not this past week, but the week prior, is maybe that becomes John Cena's opponent. We know that the talk had been out there of Cena and Lars Sullivan. If that is no longer a direction, I like Drew kind of unseating the star of the past. And that is, I think, a lot more valuable for Drew. And you have a really hot heel coming out of WrestleMania.
I like that a lot as a substitute. I wonder what Drew's role. Thank you, by the way, Mitch, for the call. I wonder what Drew's role would have been had, it maybe what his plans are right now for WrestleMania.
Yeah, I don't know.
They're not obvious at all. But I would love the idea of him facing Cena. It's a high-profile match, and I think it would be a really big win for Drew.
You could get some great, like they had some, I thought, very good chemistry just on the mic during that segment. I think that's a great program for Drew McIntyre.
Yeah,
going in. A few other items from the past couple of days. Tokyo Sports had their awards ceremony, and all the major guys are there in attendance. It's a big suit and tie affair. This is like the serious version of the Slammies. And Kenny Omega was there to accept, along with Okada, the Match of the Year award that they received. And Omega gave a speech that was recapped on Yahoo in Japan. And Chris Charlton did translate a little bit of it, that he stated that he may not be on the same stage next year, and he plans to go have the Match of the Year on the international stage, furthering his hints that his time with New Japan, at least as a contracted performer, is limited, with his deal set to expire January 31st. And yeah, I think that certainly the breadcrumbs are being dropped to lead everyone to believe that this guy is not going to be re-signing with New Japan Pro Wrestling. Will he have some kind of a relationship like Kota Ibushi does? That is to be determined ultimately by where he lands and if it's All Elite, what is All Elite's relationship with New Japan in 6 months from now? Because it could be very different than today's.
Certainly, yeah. Certainly, I think we can look past the MSG show, but before I think maybe determining what the clarity of that like. But Kenny Omega is just the hottest free agent in pro wrestling right now. Somebody who stands to like make a whole lot of money. He holds the cards for a number of promotions, whether it be all AEW or New Japan or even the WWE.
I'm curious if he's receiving offers outside of the same companies we announced that are just
who are the other players?
Ring of Honor.
Maybe.
Listen, if an Impact Wrestling is making an offer to a Chris Jericho, why are they not making an offer to a Kenny Omega? Yeah. I'm not stating that's a likely destination. I'm just curious if they're even kicking the tires, throwing an offer.
Yeah.
Like if you're Kenny Omega, you're listening to anyone.
Yeah, I wonder. I just my assumption is that the numbers are probably really high. And at what point, are kind of other companies maybe getting priced out? I'm not sure.
Also, from the Chris Jericho podcast, he confirmed the detail that had been out there, that it's an exclusive 3-year deal with AEW, with the exception of New Japan, that he can make his own deal with New Japan.
Yeah.
So that's important.
Yep. So he has that distinction, at least, that we know of. And I'm sure it'll be one that, I guess, like, he has the option. But the other question is if New Japan will be willing to work with him with his association with AEW. Would ROH be happy with that?
Yeah, that's there's many different political hurdles here, but when you are someone that can be a difference maker when it comes to business, that tends to change the rules to the specific performer, and Jericho certainly qualifies as one of those people.
Any other kind of recent signings that you think we should be discussing here? Roosh, we talked about.
Yeah, we talked about Roosh to Ring of Honor. We'll still be doing dates with CMLL.
Yep. Any updates on people such as Kushida or Strange Strickland or other people that are rumored to be coming in?
I mean, with Shane Strickland, I think people anticipate that there's going to be an upcoming class for NXT that I think is going to be a pretty loaded one. Trevor Lee has already announced he is going. Kushida is expected to be WWE bound.
Maybe 205 bound.
Yes. And then we've got...
how do you feel about that?
With Kushida?
205 live.
Yeah, I think it's not great.
I'll watch 205 live, though, at least for a few weeks. Yeah, I want to see how he does. I think those matches will be amazing. I just hope the audience reaction.
I've never looked at 205 live and said, oh, you know what? It's the match quality that's really holding me back from following this.
I hope the audience's reactions to him will be favorable if he just debuts live into right on 205 live like that. I hope the storylines will be important enough, or is it just a fruitless battle to try to make 205 live that relevant of a show?
Yeah, to me the talent has never been the issue on 205 live, and it's just it is what it is, and I don't see Kushida changing the entire opinion of that. Just as a priority show, 205 live as a whole.
Brandon wants to ask, where does Marco Stunt go when he's ready? Do you think he will be somebody who will be picked up by one of the...
Okay, let's recap this, because Dave Meltzer had this week on his radio show that he has not been signed yet, but is expected to, and that's Jungle Boy, who is the son of Luke Perry, that people might not be familiar with, and has kind of gained a following on the Game Changer wrestling shows and on the California scene. So if they are signing up people at the level of a Jungle Boy, Marco Stunt is 100% going to be signed by someone. Definitely. When he comes back and is physically ready to wrestle again.
At this point, David Arquette, I wouldn't be surprised if he got signed by somebody. Anybody with some level of buzz attached to him over the past year. Ilya Dragunov. No?
Yep. Yeah, he is another one expected to be part of the NXT UK brand. There are just so many talent situations that are in motion at the moment. That another thing of value, I think, is the fact that if you have not had that national exposure yet, I think that's something also that AEW seems to be looking at, is not just having your established talent, your big name talent, but also people like the OWE crew that, yes, certain people have seen some of these guys, but in terms of a big audience in North America, these are some fresh faces. These are some fresh names, and it's a fresh style as well. So I think that agreement is going to be a really beneficial one.
I think what's also interesting is that, like last year, in the years prior, WrestleMania weekend has always felt like this wonderful, wonderful festival of like the best of non-WWE talent just everywhere, scattered all across the city. Do you think it'll look like a very different scene this year in the years but beyond?
I just think it's not going to be the days of guys being able to work every single place, because now it's part of these promotions it's not just trying to get dates on guys. It's trying to be the exclusive home of these people. So, something we didn't talk about with the new main event for MLW show is
LA
Park taking on Pentagon Jr., who has booked himself. He is on the WrestleCon Super Show that Thursday night. He's on the MLW show advertised for the main event. And while Impact has not announced any matches yet for their show, that's that same night. And on the on the ticket site, they are listing Pentagon. So he is in theory booked on 3 shows that are all taking place at the same time. And like, you can do 2 shows that are taking place at the same time. 3 seems really tough to pull off logistically. That for him to do all 3 shows seems like a stretch.
I think he could do it though. Well, we've seen guys have that ridiculous schedule at WrestleMania weekend.
Yeah, but you don't 3 shows at the same start time. These are like 7:30, 8 p.m. start
I'm sure
times.
Zack Sabre Jr. or Will Ospreay has done something crazy like that.
I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's difficult.
I'm also wondering, like, the quality of those matches, I'm sure, will still be really high, but it also depends on the style of match as well. But yeah, it's going to be nuts.
It also takes communication among these promotions that if they wanted to be difficult, they certainly could too.
And what the traffic situation is like.
Well, that's it. Like the Impact show was out in Jamaica, Queens.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a bit of a distance.
That's the documentary I want. You know,
just
somebody following
a dash cam on Pentagon Jr.'s,
sure.
Uber driver.
Yeah. But how many of those cases do you think there will be this year at WrestleMania? Are we going to see less and less of?
I think you're going to see that. I mean, Tom Lawler, he got pulled from a Black Label Pro show, and that was, I think that's because he's got a conflict with MLW. So MLW takes the precedence there.
Right.
Like Tom Lawler is booked on MLW, and he's doing the Bloodsport show. And I think that there's probably a lot of those talents that guys want to get dates on, and it's the contract era, and the contract era is going to be morphing into the exclusive contract era.
Yeah.
And I think next year at WrestleMania week, that's going to be something, because so many of these guys, they're going to be putting pen to paper on exclusive deals. And I think the days of seeing the top indie guys doing 8 to 10 shows a week or a weekend for WrestleMania, I think those days are passing. It's going to be the talent trying to make a name for themselves. Those are the ones that can spread themselves thin.
Again, it's a great thing for all the talent, but I think for the fans, where are you going to see all this talent that's being, held by all these companies? Like, it's not like they're necessarily, the WWE is not putting on as many shows as, say, all these guys were wrestling in throughout the course of a weekend. I guess you'll have to look at things like Access, like Access is going to be stacked this year with all that talent.
I think that WWE each year, they have seemed to put more of an emphasis on Access to try and compete with these shows. And like this year, I'm certain that you're going to see Access beef up their Access cards with the NXT and NXT UK talent.
Yeah, for sure. It's going to be amazing. But
I'm almost surprised they're not running a UK show WrestleMania weekend, because I think that there is enough that they could do an 8,000 to 9,000 seat building for NXT UK now.
Your top stars are going to be there, though. I'm sure they'll announce something. They're doing this Worlds Collide thing.
That's Royal Rumble weekend.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure they'll announce something similar for WrestleMania.
Yeah. Like you run WrestleMania weekend in New York City, and you've got Pete Dunne and Tyler Bate and Trent Seven and Walter. Walter will come over here. He will do it with Ilya Dragunov. You put those guys, that's doing 8,000 to 9,000 people in New York City WrestleMania weekend.
Yeah, but they're not necessarily promoting Access for that on the basis of these cards, And I think,
can you imagine Walter at Access?
It'll happen.
Like, it probably will.
Yeah. I mean, I saw Brock Lesnar at Access once upon a time.
That's true.
So it'll be really interesting.
It's a fascinating time. Like, to be covering the industry right now, I think is one of the most intriguing periods I've ever covered, because there's so many moving parts, and it's going to be each week. I think there's going to be different things dropping that are going to be throwing a curveball into whatever people perceive the direction is going.
Yeah, I really look forward to seeing like how, kind of those non big 3, big 4 companies are going to cope with all this. Are they going to go the route of, trying to be more creative with their cards? Like something like Bloodsport, I see as such a niche thing that the WWE won't compete with, or necessarily AEW. Like Frank Mir appearing on a Bloodsport, I don't think other companies are really going to be go near towards something like that. So are we going to see kind of, those independent promotions go farther and farther into niche styles of professional wrestling that AEWs and, New Japan's and WWE won't be touching?
Here's another one. There's so many hypotheticals, but let's say that there's, and from all we can understand, is that there are multiple suitors that All Elite Wrestling have been talking to for a television deal. They go with one network. has the other kind of bought in on pro wrestling? And if they're left at the altar without an AEW deal, does that shut the door on professional wrestling? All it takes is one other network to suddenly say, hey, we want wrestling. We have bought in, we have done the research into this all elite wrestling. We didn't get them. What is the next best target? And an Impact Wrestling lands a better TV deal in the US. Like, that's how quick this game can change.
Yeah.
I think that you have a level of interest now amongst cable networks that are at least looking into this and saying, what is this subgenre? We now understand there is wrestling that is non-WWE. And this all-in show has shown us that, man, there's quite a ceiling at this secondary level. And where's the next all elite wrestling?
Well, I've always felt like Ring of Honor could be doing a better TV, like an actual kind of more better than Sinclair, at least, like better than syndication. Who's to say that WWE themselves won't start shopping around some of these other shows, be it 205 or NXT? They always have those options.
Yeah, it's there's many interesting parts to it.
Sorry, Mitch has a quick question from the chat. Again, he says, if ROH wasn't owned by Sinclair and Impact wasn't trapped by the Anthem TV situation, would they have had a chance to go land real TV?
Well, I mean, with Sinclair, I mean, there's nothing stopping them from shopping this as like a national, like they own the company. So if there was a network out there that wanted to take Ring of Honor away from syndication, and Sinclair was being paid such an amount that it made sense to remove that from their syndication package, there's nothing stopping them from doing that. So on the Impact side, I think that clearly this is showing, like this exit from Pop, there was not a lot of interest. There was probably minimal interest in Impact Wrestling, because if there wasn't, then they wouldn't be on the Pursuit channel. So I think that tells you what the demand was for Impact Wrestling after this last go around. And from all indications, it's not exclusive with Pursuit. I mean, it's partially owned by Anthem, so that doesn't exclude them from cutting a better deal if one comes away and they're locked in to a deal with Pursuit. It seems that if something better comes along, Impact can entertain those offers. And I think that's pretty vital for them in 2019 to have a better window. I did watch Impact on Friday, and I watched it on Twitch, and like, it was an actual kind of enjoyable experience to watch it on Twitch.
With the chat room?
No, I turned the chat room off. I did not need that. I don't ever need a chat room when I'm watching something. I can tell you 100%. But
except for these cafe hangouts,
of course. But in between the commercials, and they would just show, old highlights of stuff, some top 5 lists, and it's cool to go and see their library. And yeah, I found it enjoyable to watch on Twitch. So the thing is, as I was watching it, like, it started around 9,000 or so viewers. I noticed it going up to around 11,000. I wasn't monitoring it significantly, but this is the amount of people that were watching it live on Twitch. You're talking around 11,000 people.
Which is still lower than your mixed match, like the worst weeks of the mixed match challenge, just to give some context. But that's, again, live. And, this is on a Friday night at 10 o'clock. But I think that tells you, like, this is... The whole idea was, okay, well, Twitch, it's free for everyone worldwide. It's like, okay, well, that's what free worldwide means, 11,000 people. Are replays available on Twitch, or is it just a live broadcast? Yeah, I think you can go back and watch it on Twitch after the fact. So, certainly I can't imagine this being their first choice, broadcasting on Pursuit or Twitch. But at the very least, I think it's a good option for them to give accessibility for people that otherwise would have never watched on Pop, if they didn't have Pop, or even Destination America. So, in that sense, I think it was a good move. But certainly, if the idea is that you're paying all this money to produce this television show, you probably want to get a better money offer for it. So I can't imagine this to be a permanent solution for Impact, if a better TV deal were to come along. Jeremy's got a quick question here from the chat room. He says, Impact Wrestling is currently split into 4 half-hour episodes this week on the Pursuit schedule. Does that have any impact on TV ratings? Impact is split into 4 half-hour blocks, like on the guide. Well, I mean, it would still, if you're tuning in, I mean, it's still taking that into account. Like, you would have Yeah, I don't imagine.
It's not like you would be taking a giant number and dividing it by 4. It would just be there would be 4 numbers that are representative of the audience. Like the audience, when you see that Impact does 300,000 viewers, that is the average taken from those 120 minutes. So that is the average amount that would be there. So it shouldn't be any different if it's broken up into 4. Raw is technically broken up into 3 individual 1-hour blocks. And we get those breakdowns of the 3 hours, and then you get an average that you can just calculate based off the 3 hours.
Okay. Anything else in news that you wanted to?
Just last things. Dakota Kai underwent surgery on Thursday for a torn ACL, which she suffered on December 7th during a 6-woman tag at an NXT live event. Rusev and Shinsuke Nakamura has been added to the Royal Rumble, as has Matt Riddle and Cassius Ohno for the TakeOver special. That looks like a very good TakeOver.
Can you give me the card right now?
Yes, it is headlined by...
by the way, is this spoiler territory or not?
No, everything's been announced. It's Tommaso Ciampa, Aleister Black for the NXT title, Ricochet against Johnny Gargano for the North American title, Undisputed Era against the War Raiders for the tag titles, and
the great promo that aired on NXT TV this week that I know was probably shot at their wedding.
That's what I thought too. Yeah. It's like, man, did this guy on his wedding day have to do promo work? I mean, I hope that this wedding was a write-off, that NXT covered the wedding. I would say these guys at the work.
At least video production, I have to assume.
Shayna Baszler versus Bianca Belair for the women's title. This week on NXT, they did a segment in the ring with Bianca Belair and Baszler, Marina Shafir, and Jessamine Duke. Bianca Belair is going to be a superstar.
Yeah.
I think that she is just outstanding. And Baszler was very good here too as the bully.
Okay, you say that. At the same time, we just reviewed NXT's TakeOver from 2016. And we see we're a great deal. Like Bayley on that show looked amazing and was treated like a spectacular home run. Like can't miss main roster conversion. And kind of let's wait and see is what I'm saying.
I'm going to go so far as to say that Montez Ford of the Street Profits and Bianca Belair are going to be the most successful husband-wife duo.
Did you not watch that hotel room skit this week, John? Come on. How could you?
I'm trying to be optimistic here, Way. I think both of them have tremendous futures. And yeah, the last one is Riddle and Cassius Ohno. So 5 matches looks like a stellar card for Saturday in Phoenix.
Yeah, I look forward to that. And I'm actually looking forward to the Rumble too.
Yeah, I think that it's shaping up to be a very good show.
Okay, before we get out of here, let's take a look at what we teased earlier, the top 50 podcasts you should be listening to right now. I'm going to screen share this one. Alrighty. This is, of course, from blogTO, the highly respected blogTO, which is a publication that I recommend to everybody when they vacation in Toronto for things to do. This is something that I was completely unaware of, but apparently I didn't even know there were 50 podcasts out of Toronto, to be honest. But let's look at some of these choices. The Backline. If you're into improv comedy, then The Backline is a must listen. The Bedpost podcast. Canadian podcast winner Eric Pin interviews guests and performers from the Bedpost stage show. So I've not heard of any of these things. Canada Land I have heard of. But the only one that matters. Oh, by the way. Okay. Anyway, the only one that really matters out of this list. Hey, look at this. Renee Paquette.
Yeah, she's on this too.
Regular Girls with Renee Paquette. But even more important than all of that, Post Wrestling right here. Post Wrestling is more like a series of different podcasts, but they all have one thing in common. Wrestling. Co-host John Pollock and Wai Ting review Raw, SmackDown, New Japan Pro Wrestling, ROH, UFC, and discuss the latest in pro wrestling news. Well, that's very nice. It's almost as if they took the time to listen to every individual show, but I have a feeling that's not necessarily what it is, because that's exactly pretty much what I have as our description for our podcast on.
Here's a description for Renee's podcast. Regular Girls. They call themselves Regular Girls, and they are, but they are also so much more. Each week, pals Renee Young and Stacey McGonigal break down celebrity gossip, beauty, fashion, with a sprinkle of conspiracy theories, crystals, and the odd tarot card. Tarot. That's what I thought.
Tarot card. Well, thank you, blogTO, for featuring us as one of 50. I'm so proud.
Thank you so much. All right. Before we wrap up, I got news for next week.
First of all, before we wrap up, didn't you promise me a card trick for this show?
Oh, that's right. Well, we have the video here.
Yeah.
Do you have a deck of cards?
I don't have.
Oh man, I forgot to get the deck of cards.
Son of a bitch.
Okay.
I warned you to.
Okay, next video. We're gonna put the video up. Okay, I'm gonna do this card trick with Wai.
We'll do it on the Cat Hangout next week.
Okay, I promise. I won't forget. Next week on the Café Hangout, it's going to be just a few days before the Royal Rumble and Royal Rumble weekend. So Wai and I are going to do a Royal Rumble preview, and joining us on the show next week is Jimmy Corderas.
Wow.
Yes.
Just confirmed?
Yes.
Right
just confirmed.
Awesome.
Well, about an hour ago.
Very
so
cool.
Jimmy will join us to preview the Royal Rumble. So looking forward to that. And yeah, maybe we'll take some calls, predictions, that kind of thing on next week's Café Hangout.
Is Jimmy going to be via Skype? Or
he will be
Hangout?
joining us, yes, digitally.
Very cool. Awesome.
All right. Is that it? Anything else to promote, mention? Discuss?
Yeah. So on the feed right now, if you're listening on Friday, of course, is the debut episode of the Rocky Maivia Picture Show, which is Nate Milton's brand new show reviewing every single film from The Rock's Hollywood career, starting with The Scorpion King, the one that started it all for Dwayne Johnson. So check that out right now on the free Post Wrestling feed, as well on the Café feed, which is our Patreon feed. You can find our review of NXT TakeOver Dallas from the year 2000, featuring Shinsuke Nakamura versus Sami Zayn. That's on this week's edition of Rewind Away. And then Saturday, John is back with Phil to review the UFC's debut on ESPN+.
Yeah, we'll discuss that on Saturday night. And I also just want to mention the passing of Chris Sims, who is a name that I don't know if everyone is familiar with. He also wrestled as Dr. Rex Bacchus, and he just passed away this week. He was working in MLW. He was part of the ring crew and also was a prelim wrestler as well. Very sad. He went into hospice care recently and just passed away. So I want to make mention of that as well. So that is going to wrap up the Café Hangout. I want to thank everybody for joining us. And you can go to postwrestling.com, postwrestlingcafe.com, and we thank you for all the support and listenership.